Hi, everyone. So it seems Apple has a bad case of FOMO, $500 billion worth. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hey, everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. St. Alan Schimmel, different background. I'm not in our studio today, unfortunately. We had some work being done here, so you're getting me in my desktop version here in my office. Happy to have you with us, though, on this wonderful Wednesday. We've got a great lineup for you. I mentioned Apple's FOMO. It's one of the most expensive FOMOs I've ever heard. But we've got more than that to cover it. We've got some great people to cover it with. Let me introduce you to them real quick. First of all, it looks like he's back home, high atop Silicon Valley. The one and only John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you?
It's good. Good. Things are good. It was great seeing you all. Mitch, Mike, Amanda last week in New York.
It was
times.
way too short, but yes, it was
Yeah.
great seeing you.
Yeah.
Great to see you. So thank you. And we, alluding to a editorial in-person team meeting we had in New York last week. In case you were smelling anything burning, it was all those brain cells we were expanding on what we're going to be doing editorially for 2025. So, John, great to have you there. Speaking of having us there for our editorial meeting, she is our managing editor. That's the right new term, right, Amanda?
Senior managing editor.
Senior managing editor. We don't have a junior managing editor. You're the only managing editor. But that all being said,
we actually do have an assistant managing editor.
Oh, okay. We have an assistant managing editor. But she's back home in Texas, where I hear it's in the high 80s, a little different than New York last week. Amanda Razzani. Hey, Amanda, how are you?
Good. Yes. Big temperature shift from New York back to Texas.
All right. We'll stay in the warm weather for now, though, and go over to our friend at sea, security expert, Chris Blask. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, Alan, I am good. For those of you following at home, this is Stock Island we see out the window, the island next to Key West, and specifically what used to be the 5 Sixes Taxi Company. Actually had a little war for their own. So all the pink cabs, for those of you who've been in Key West, that was the 5 Sixes Taxi Company, which I think is finally gone. Here we are. Good to see you. Good to be here.
There is no Uber down in the Keys, if I remember correctly.
Oh, there is Uber. Absolutely. I use it all the time.
Now there is Uber. I think last time I thought there was no Uber there. Anyway, Chris, it's great to have you on board. Now we'll go back up to our cold weather friends. First, we'll go to the guitar man up in Colorado. He's back home after a quick trip to New York, pit stop in the D.C. area, and home to Colorado, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Doing well. Yeah, I made a pit stop in DC, as you mentioned, spent some time with some BMC folks. So it was great to, both be in New York and get a chance to be with the editorial team for a little bit, and also go and visit some companies.
Excellent. Thanks, Mitch. Welcome. And then last but not least, he looks pink. It must be cold up there. Up from Harrison, New York, the Dean, Mike Vizard.
It's quite the opposite, actually. It's going to be 50 degrees today. And since we live in a world where correlation is causation, you guys should stay the hell out of New York.
That means, yeah, as if you think 50 degrees is warm. But anyway, Mike, great to have you on here. So I wanted to kick off today with, I teased it in the opening. Is this a case of Apple's FOMO? Is it a case of wrapping themselves in the flag and getting in the good graces of the present administration? Or is it just good business? Mike, what do you think?
I think this is a very expensive way to bend the knee. But John, I think you want to jump into this because
sure. I'll give some of the details, and then I'll throw in my editorialized viewpoint, because I think it's a combination of everything Alan said and what you just said, Mike. Basically, Apple is throwing a big bone to Trump. In a sense, they announced on Monday they're investing more than $500 billion in the US over the next 4 years, with plans to hire 20,000 people, open a new manufacturing plant in Houston, open other or expand on other facilities in California, Michigan, Iowa, where have you, Arizona. And they've also, in a sense, made this commitment to basically. Trump kind of teased it out. He basically blurted out that he met with Cook very stealthily, and that Cook assured him that the company, Apple, was going to shift manufacturing from Mexico to the US to avoid paying tariffs. So that's a major motivation. The other motivation is that in terms of China, Apple also is at risk, right, with these 10% tariffs in China, where most of Apple's products are made. So in a sense, Tim Cook, who I think is actually very good at playing Trump, in a sense, probably I don't believe in a second that they're going to devote this much money. They spend $10 billion a year on capital expenses now. Can you imagine them doing 125 billion a year for 4 years? I don't think it's going to happen, but I think what they're going to do just enough to get exemptions from him in terms of tariffs. They're going to keep the White House happy. They'll do some of the things on the list, and then they'll move on. Because once again, think about history. Back in 2018, Apple made a similar pledge during the first Trump administration. They said they were going to create 20,000 new jobs as part of a $350 billion US investment plan. And as part of that plan, they were not targeted in terms of tariffs in China. So in a sense, Apple is playing it very smart politically. They're also trying to stay up to date and up to par with the other big tech guys who are throwing hundreds of billions of dollars into AI development. It's political, but it's also business wise. But I think in a sense, Cook is kind of the master when it comes to playing Trump, and I think the other tech leaders could learn from him.
So let me
Yeah, I think,
ask you
like
this
you
though.
said, John,
Hmm.
the first thing I thought when I read this article was, they're kind of just following suit. They tend to be kind of the last. They stay
Yep,
back, and they're the
exactly.
last, so they're just doing so now.
They usually draft other people, and like thinking of the car analogy, they draft other companies when
Mhm.
they move into a market. They wait until the market's established, and they make their move. They may be late on AI. That's debatable, but in a sense, too, this is one of those things. And also, is it just me, or I sense a deja vu? We saw that $500 billion figure before with Stargates. We're seeing the 20,000 new jobs figure from 2018 to now. It's just they play this narrative and this formulaic game with Trump to keep him happy, and then he gets distracted and moves on to something else.
Yeah, I think it's also a difference in leadership style here. You mentioned Apple kind of follower. That's one part of it. I think, Cook doesn't need to be out there with the tech bros and trying to be, the Musk and the Zuck and the whoever, he's just not into that part of it. It's all part of the, perception is the alternate reality nowadays. Instead of perception is reality. I agree with you. It's well, what is that 500 makeup? Well, it could be, yeah, Apple Cash investment, whatever. It could be ecosystem of Apple and all the partners and everybody that is part of, investing and creating technology that ends up there to support or part of their product. So it's a game. It's a game. And, it's about parading the people that are supporting Trump's policies and getting them to be visible and vocal about it. And nobody goes back and says, let's just ticker the tape here and see what really happened. No, that doesn't happen.
Can I just mention one really thing really quickly? Is like a picture tells you 1,000 words, right? At the inauguration, you notice we have this iconic photograph of Zuckerberg, Pakai from Google, Bezos, Musk, all lined up together. Guess who's behind them, to the right, to the left of the camera, just out of range, so you can't pick him up? It's Cook. He's the Apple's also the company, along with Microsoft, that wasn't too obvious when it came to doing things behind the scenes, as Meta was and as Amazon was. So in a sense, this guy is Cook. In a sense, is kind of this kind of cool customer politician type, and I think he's handled it pretty well. But again, I'm just going to go back to the $500 billion. That's just is like I cannot believe that's going to happen.
So let's take that number apart because, we used to see IBM do this crap all the time. They'd stand up and say, we're going to spend $50 billion on something. But, they added up every nickel that they spent on every other
Depends
thing.
like how much Doge is saving us.
Right. Similar. So, I mean, $500 billion on a company that, to your point, has been spending $10 billion a year. So that's going to ratchet up by a factor of what? That doesn't seem
10,
probable.
12 and a half. Yeah.
So if that's the case, Alan, I don't know what you think, but every time I
All
turn
right, let
around,
me tell you what I think. I've been very patient. Let me just say the emperor has no clothes here. It's no secret around the world that this buffoon can be played like a cheap suit in a nickel piano bar. You come up and tell him what you're going to do, and the more you promise and the more outlandish it is, the more he touts it. This is not a new script. Where's the money from Son, from SoftBank, from the last time he was president? They never invested a damn dime. Where's
New boss, same as the old boss, right, Alan?
I'm not done yet. Where's the factory that TSMC was building the last time we were here that they never broke ground on? Has any of these MFs ever spent anywhere near the money they say they were going to spend? This isn't an old IBM thing. Macron did it yesterday in the White House too. This is theater at its best when you've got Charlie Chaplin playing the dictator and people could come in and do it and say whatever they want and he gets all happy about it. Guys, wake up, smell the coffee. First of all, what exact AI server is Apple making? Are they going into the server business? Is that what I'm assuming? Is that what I'm hearing? Because I'm not aware of any Apple servers.
Mm-hmm. It's only the ones that they use for their own cloud services, theoretically.
Yeah. They don't make servers. Stop.
Oh, but Alan, Cook could just make something up. He just come up with any type of mumbo jumbo.
He's smarter than everyone else. They all make shit up because that's what we live in. We live in a bullshit world where the more you BS and the bigger the BS and the louder you say it and the more you say it, the more he expects people to believe it. I've had enough. It's a month in and I'm done with it. I don't believe a damn word that comes out of these things. Just as I didn't say it jokingly. This is the same thing with Doge saving us $1 trillion. If 1% of that is real, the whole thing's nonsense. But it's consumed by an audience that wants nonsense. So if we're not going to, if we're not people, we deserve what we get.
So you don't believe that? So you don't believe that Meta's going to plans to construct the world's largest undersea cable to expand high-speed internet access globally? Then I'm being facetious.
No, why would we give them?
I'm being very facetious.
Access? We're going to keep all our internet access here.
But Alan, you don't understand. We want to believe. We want to believe. We want this to be true, because if we don't, then we're wrong, and that would be bad. We're not going to admit we're wrong. I'm saying we at the bigger we, not me.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could say whatever you want, but look, the facts bear it out.
Right. Some of the nonsense too is like how many of these jobs are actually going to get created. Even if I built this giant factory in Houston, all that's automated. So there's not going to be actually a whole lot of people getting additional jobs, just other than that guy maybe who's overseeing the robotic construction engine.
Well, yeah, that's what.
Can I just show you the ludicrous, the ridiculousness of this? Take 20,000 jobs divided into 500 billion. What is each job costing you?
A lot. Well, yeah,
that's each job costs something like $50 million. Those are real expensive excuse my language. Those are real expensive jobs.
To pretty it up, Apple said they were going to focus on R&D, the jobs, R&D, silicon engineering with AI, machine learning. Again, it's, just feed the beast. Just tell the emperor what he wants to hear.
He will
nod his head approvingly.
This is some. I'm not sure if it's quite Caligula or was still at Nero, but it's something in that range right there.
I never thought I'd hear Caligula on this show. Wow.
It's $25 million a job, by the way, Alan.
25 million, excuse me. Okay. Those are some pretty expensive jobs. So the math doesn't even work, but who cares? These people don't care. We won. We won.
You know,
But
the
do we
irony.
think they really are going to open some factories? Like, are they opening a
Yeah, where
factory
they're
for
going to
sure in
build their
Houston?
AI servers.
Okay.
They don't have AI servers, Amanda.
But I'm just saying, do we think they are? Like, are they going to build a factory to start AI servers? I'm just curious.
I think they'll build something that looks like a factory, but there won't be any workers in it because it's all going to be run by
It'll be all
robots.
automated,
I mean,
right?
look, if Apple was serious, they would talk about building iPhones in the
You know,
US.
the irony in all this is that the guy who told the truth about how ridiculous this is Musk in his own weird way when he said that the Stargate would never spend $500 billion, let alone raise the money. So, I mean, in a sense, he knows how patently ridiculous this is. So,
Well, but so there's the corruptness of the whole thing. At the very top, the people like Musk, and even I don't know about Trump because he is in a bit of his own world. But Musk and some of the other evil generals behind this, they know that this is all for public consumption, that this has no foot in reality, but it's red meat for the masses who consume this crap, who are going to say, look what he did, and no immigrants will work there either. No H-1B visas. I want all red-blooded Americans.
And it's a good thing all those people were laying off in the government will now have jobs working for Apple.
Hey, 20 million a job, Mitch.
Yes.
25 million a job. I quit my government job for that job too.
I'll just take the recruiting fee on that. On
Yeah.
this.
Come on, guys. So I, for one, am not going to be. That's not me. Right? My film, yeah. You know,
this is like this is the most effective news Apple has announced in a long time since the products haven't exactly knocked our socks off lately. So,
well, if they spent
I guess it's a great marketing for them.
Better products.
Yeah. So, do you think we're going to see, Samsung show up and start talking about how they're going to make phones in the U.S. and
Yes.
probably put a factory next door to Apple?
Mm-hmm.
You know what they say?
Talking about, yes.
Talk is cheap. And if that's all it takes, that and a little flattery, and they'll vote for you in the UN resolution too, you're good. I mean, this is the state of the world we live in. As Laurel would say to Hardy, or Hardy would say to Laurel, it's a fine mess we've gotten ourselves into.
As you used to say, the new normal. It is the new normal right now.
Well, on behalf of Techstrong and John and Amanda, I'd like to pledge right now that we're going to write 50 billion words about this in the next 5 years.
Seems like we have, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
Words. That's about right.
Transcribe this video about 20,000 times and you're close.
I'm just trying to find anything to add to this. But, as a Siri person in the room, let me just say it, right? I think you're all right. I think you're all correct. I think Tim Cook is in his corporate role and his responsibility to shareholder value, doing, as you discussed, exactly the right things. Stand just outside the picture, say the right sort of mouth things, and protect the corporate interest. And Alan, Devin, you're right as well. Like, this is, again, as we discussed, this information warfare environment we're in, where when you get to the point where the Steve Bannon goal of burying the field in, let's say, manure, to the point that nobody can tell one thing from the other, that's when just shouting works the best, because nobody can figure out what's true, so the loudest voice wins. And as aside from every other role anybody in my profession has, remembering that it's information security, not cybersecurity. We're the folks supposed to understand how information can move around in ways that people can use that. it's not working right now. We've got work to do. What are the answers? Don't know. But yeah, this is the world we live in.
Certainly is, my friends. All right. Let us take a break here on Techstrong Gang. Let's calculate how much we could really pledge of what we're going to commit over the next 4 years. We'll be back. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back with yet another one of these political subjects, and it relates to Alibaba, the big Chinese cloud company, e-commerce giant, is also pledging to spend all kinds of money, $52.4 billion on AI and data centers and all kinds of fun things. And Chris, I'd love to get your opinions here, because one of the things people don't really talk that much about Alibaba is they have data centers in Northern Virginia, California, and given the current climate, how political do you think all this is going to get? Or are we going to wind up someday serving eviction notices to Alibaba to kick them out of the country because everybody's just going to line up on their favorite national boundaries? And I'll add Lenovo into that mix too. So how crazy can crazy get?
Oh, it can get really crazy. That's the thing about crazy, right? The range is always wide, and I don't know. It has a Cold War kid, right? I have this funny sort of slanted view of what's going on in the world right now, because I grew up with the idea that we have these countries, the Soviet Union and China, behind their great walls. They've cut themselves off from the world, where we are the free market, free speech, capitalist democracy side of the world, and we'll engage with everybody. We'll in fact create a global supply chain, and we will teach you how to do the same things we do back at home, so that you can do the same thing and make money, and heck, buy our products, sell us something. Heck, we'll go nuts. Which is the whole American thing, right? And all my life, as I've said, I belong to all three major political parties at different times. I believe that each time. I think there's interesting points we have as a bunch of crazy Yanks, but that's what it boils down to, right? Right? Almost unique. I think I love this country. I think it certainly is. Everything's unique, but I think we have a special role in this. And I'm a security person. I get it. So watching Russia cut itself off from the world, a kleptocratic, dictatorship from classic Dostoevsky, right? Watching China go the opposite direction. Any American who's done business in China, in the modern era, you walk around, it is a capitalist boiling furnace. People will sell you things you can't walk fast enough not to be sold something walking down the streets. And then to see us now arguing the exact opposite of everything we've argued since Eisenhower, right? Let's wall ourselves off and let's make sure that we can. I don't think it's the right direction at all. But I will say that on the security, having a supply chain is a thing, and we really do need to, for a purely security reason, know what's in our stuff and who did it, and to the right level of know all the way down. And we haven't been able to. We can't feel comfortable about things, not just in these massive geopolitical things, but really any things, until we can figure out how to do that. And we're getting there. We will get, it is achievable now this decade to implement in a individual sector, for example, really astounding visibility in supply chain. Now, if we had that, and you could then say, now at the nation state level, geopolitically, we have these concerns, where is it? Instead of just napalming, entire continents with policies, that might be a different world.
I don't know, John. One of the things you hear all the time is that we're losing the AI race to China, and I can't tell if that's real or if that's just some scam that the Valley's running to get more funding out of Wall Street and the government.
I think it's the fear of missing out. You're right. It's the whole FOMO factor that we mentioned at the top of the show, right? You just create this enemy. It was like the U.S. Channeling what Chris said, going back to the Cold War. The defense contractors would warn us about the nuclear arms race and how there was a missile gap, and then we would, in a sense, get more funding, more funding, more funding for defense. I think the same thing's happening in Silicon Valley, where there's this fear factor. DeepSeek really hit home with it. And in fact, DeepSeek is coming out with its sequel to R1 very soon, evidently, according to a Reuters report. So there's this calculus that the companies are making here because they're getting so much funding for anything that's AI related, even if it's a silly idea. And and again, you prop up China as the big enemy, DeepSeek, Alibaba, whomever, ByteDance, and you create this enemy, you create this fear, and it just helps you. It's very self-rewarding. So you're right, Mike. This is where it's going, and the narrative's just going to intensify. And you're seeing it like every other day. There's like some ridiculous amount of money allegedly going to a project, and it's in a sense, it'd be interesting to see in hindsight what percentage of the money's actually spent that's been promised. It probably is going to be less than 20%.
John, is we if you remember back to too big to fail, right? The institutions that are so big we can't allow them to fail. We have a similar kind of attitude around AI. I think at all levels whether it's nation states or the latest startup, is AI is too important to lose out. And so that's why we see such massive dollars being spent on AI data centers, or at least, and the big claims, the $500 billion kind of claims. Some of it is marketing position and keeping your name in the conversation, and some of it is real spend. But we're in this race to spend as much money, kind of race to the bottom of how much money can we spend on AI, just out of fear of losing. And at some point, that will, of course, be so overburdened in terms of bubbles and market sizes and ridiculousness that we'll pay the price for it. But that's the era I think we're in right now.
Right. It'll correct itself. It's just a question of how long this is going to last. I mean, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. There's such a volatile pace to everything that's going on in terms of the funding, the promises, the models that come out seemingly every day that beat others in terms of benchmarks, which are very nebulous to be charitable.
Little irrational exuberance, anyone? So let me give you my shimmy take on this one. I spoke about this, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and I called it AI imperialism, right? And that's what you got going on here, right? Make no mistake about it. Russia is probably not in this race until we become very, very close allies, and Trump will probably transfer some of our best AI technology and build some factories and data centers in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Because after all, they are our best friends historically. But the real race here is every world power is trying to become a leader in AI, right? That DeepSeek was Sputnik. And now the US, my God, they're panicking, and we're going to spend $500 billion on Stargate, and we're going to do this, and Apple's spending another $500 billion, and we're putting it all here. We're going to be the US leaders we don't want to be leaders of the free world. We're just going to be the US, the greatest country on earth. And it's all going to be right here. And if you want to use it, you got to come here. If you're over there, you can't use it. You got to come here. Europe says, well, we're not coming here. We're going to make our own thing, and we're investing a couple of $100 billion too, including Ukraine. Right? Then you've got China, and China's a different cat. Because when Alibaba says they get $52+ billion, you got the full faith and credit of the Chinese government behind them, basically, who own, I don't know, a couple $1 trillion of US bonds. Right? And their game is clear. They want to be the preeminent power in AI because they'll be the rest of the world who is going to want to use it. And that's really the game here. Who's going to own the spice trade. It's the same game that's been going on Earth for the last 500 or more years. Who's going to own the spice trade? Who's going to have the not the monopoly, but the best of whatever the latest commodity is, right? We're fighting for Dune. It's Arrakis. He who owns
It's
spice.
oil fields. It's name the most important asset.
Chris, do we need the equivalent of a speech from President Eisenhower warning us about the AI industrial complex?
No, right? I have to put some light back in the room, and not that the doom prognostications or risks aren't all over the place, and yeah, I mean, in what my last comments, I was thinking more generally, right? As you guys were saying, there's a lot of posturing and money, I arguably throwing around and so on and so forth. It is what it is. I'll believe it when I see it. But I think, I think like a lot of waves, I'm a little crazier and stupider this time for various reasons. It's right and it's wrong. I think that it is important. I think what we're currently calling AI, oh gosh, it's kind of what we've always thought computers are supposed to be. We shouldn't have to actually know how this transistors work at the atomic level to be able to use the bloody things. So the irrational exuberance is at every level, right? So our governments and our governing bodies in the state that they are responding, as you folks are saying, kind of stupidly, but and it could be the end of the world. Lots of things could be the end of the world, but I don't know. I don't think a nation. Number one, we don't have an Eisenhower or anything like it, and we don't have the same sort of reach. There's not 3 channels, right?
And
not every world needs to do anything about this.
There was this in his farewell address, Biden referred to the tech industrial complex. I think that's how he phrased it, as kind of a warning shot as he was leaving. Since he left, things only intensified. It was almost as if he never said anything, which is probably par for the course, and it was ignored. If anything, things accelerated and tech got more powerful. So his warning shot was kind of an echo in a distant cave.
I guess, well, if you whisper something, nobody's going to hear it. So that's kind of...
I wasn't going to go there, but you're right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess as an entrepreneur. I mean, John, you're right. I mean, it's funny, among my left-handed friends, I'm the capitalist pig corporate guy, right? I really believe in all that stuff. But this doesn't help, right? Concentrating all the wealth in a couple of hands and all that, we did that for I don't know, most of human history. The idea is to have consumers who can afford to buy things and start companies and do stuff. So all this 500 billion here, 500 billion there, and tech bros who, dominate the everything. This isn't great capitalism. Aside from everything else, it's not even good at what it's supposed to be good at.
Alibaba is. This move from Alibaba, it's a sad state of affairs when the Chinese out-capitalist us. But this move is clearly, they are planting flags in AI throughout the world. They want to be the world's AI provider. And don't kid yourself, Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, these companies have the muscle, especially if we retrench and just focus inward, that we could wind up not being the leader in AI.
It's true. And if you're sitting in Africa or Asia somewhere and you're watching what the Americans are saying, who are you going to turn to?
Absolutely. And that's the game here. That's the game. But don't worry, we'll have Russia.
So I am genuinely curious. I just want to hear your thoughts. Are there any security concerns that the rest of the world will have to have if one country comes out way on top with AI and controls most of the AI? Will there be security concerns for the rest of the world?
That is the concern, Amanda. Security and dominance in the world is obviously from weapons to economies to you name it. I mean, that's the concern.
There's reasons for this big race that we're having.
Yeah. Well, it's like the space race, right? And a lot of people, I live on Starlink, right? And I had the opportunity to have a long conversation with Gwynn Shotwell, who runs SpaceX and Starlink and all that, like 5 years ago, and I've been using it ever since. And it's, a lot of people saying right now, all these satellites and Kessler syndrome and messing with astronomy and so forth. You have to understand that this time. China is putting up Europe is putting up massive communication satellites. We're in the era where there's going to be massive satellite communications arrays. There need to be more than one. And one of anything is dangerous and risky. This issue, AI, big, huge AI, right? The Skynet potential AI. Yeah, there need to be more than one, right? It's all to all the conspiracy theorists out there, right? Even if you're right, there's 7 other conspiracies. They're arguing amongst themselves. I think mostly we can ignore things as long as there's not too much concentration in one spot. And this is, I don't think we're at risk of that actually happening. I think we're at risk of global conflict because of perceptions that happening. But yeah, there cannot be only one. This is not Highlander.
Okay.
All righty, let's take a break.
Highlander reference, but I got
There can be only one. Sean Connery. Anyway, hey, let's take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We'll come back. We've got our third block to go over. Hopefully it's a little less contentious. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, we're back with that slightly less contentious segment that we're about to talk about, where the president took time out of his incredibly busy schedule to call out the European Union for applying taxes/tariffs to digital services that are created outside of their particular country and region. That got a quick response from the EU country saying, mind your own business, essentially, and we'll continue to do what we're going to do. But this managed to get rolled up into this tariff conversation. And we talked about the impact tariffs were having on tech last week. I don't think Alan was on that show. But as you look at this, isn't there kind of strange to me, at least, that everybody in the tech sector who showed up for that photo that John was talking about last segment has a stake in this conversation? So is there a quid pro quo at work here, Alan?
First of all, let me mention that was probably a decision he made between the 8th and 9th hole. Right? How hard he was working. But that all being said, surprisingly, this is not one where I strongly disagree. I'm against tariffs in as Chris said, I also grew up as a Cold War baby where the US was about free trade and we're going to out-trade, out-manufacture, out-innovate, right, to maintain our leadership in the world, not put up walls. However, the EU clearly put up walls, right? The EU, and I understand why they did it. They were trying to get their mojo back, right, and become a world player. And so they imposed these digital service taxes on anything not coming out of there. I remember even, back in the .com days, and the company I helped build, Interliant, we did a deal with Sagitel in France, and we wound up putting a data center in right out of Paris, and we did a lot of European business, and there was clearly home cooking at play, right? And if you were, a U.S. company, they made it a little bit harder for you. I'm not against I'm against the U.S. doing tariffs but I'm not for the EU doing tariffs either. I think we all have to play by the same rules. And so if this is a case of, hey, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, and let's all go back to even Steven, right? And just let the chips fall where they may, I'm all for it. But if you're going to tax US firms because you want to encourage a domestic, EU domestic industry of digital business, I don't think there's anything the matter with us reciprocating with that. And as long as that's what it is, but that it should, I think we have to remember that that doesn't mean they're not our allies, or that we should go cozy up with the dictators and the authoritarians of the world. But I think we all benefit when we have an equal playing field.
Alan, it's almost like there's 3 levels of this. One is tariffs for you're trying to incent some behavior or disincent some behavior. Then there's the response to that, right? Okay, if you're going to do that, I'm going to do that. Then there's this third tier of I'll use it as a bludgeoning tool, as a political tool to get people's attention, or maybe really to punish people that we don't like because of some political, whether it's border crossings or drugs or whatever we want to name it. I question whether all that's really true. Why Trump is doing, I think it's largely a negotiating ploy to get people's attention and to basically bully them into what he wants. So we seem to be doing a lot more of that, and I suspect the EU's response is probably more of this kind of first and middle tier, but you don't know that either. It's just interesting how we're suddenly thrust into this. Tariffs are only about politics, and of course they aren't.
So the thing with the tariffs, though, is it seems like when we reciprocate, it's not one for one, right? We'll turn around and we will say, we're going to slap tariffs on, wine because they're taxing digital services. So how do we keep this thing from escalating to the point where, it just becomes this arms race of tariffs back and forth till the point where we just all destroy our respective economies?
Yeah, I've never much understood the point. Of course, I'm not in economics, and I'm sure there's people who know better, but I've never understood the point, because it just seems like one country imposes a tariff and the other country imposes it right back. So you either all have a bunch of tariffs or you all don't have tariffs. I mean, really, I don't get how it works, I guess. But again, I'm not in economics, so.
Well, I think you're spot on, because it doesn't work. So that's it.
Well, but you know what? The idea here is fully expecting that we're going to get into this tariff tit for tat. And the thought is, well, our market's bigger than yours, and so you want to be here more than we want to be there. And that used to work, I think, when Eisenhower spoke about the industrial military complex. But, when you look at the combined European market, it ain't a heck of a lot smaller than the U.S. market. When you look at, from both a population and dollars, euros, European, Chinese market, not a heck of a lot smaller than ours and a much bigger population. India, rising, huge population, right? So, this is who's going to stay in the latest, right? A little bit of a game of chicken is what you're playing.
Mm-hmm. So taking your thought about free markets, and let's just keep them open, though, what happens, though, when suddenly China uses its manufacturing muscle to flood the U.S. car market and we're all driving Chinese cars? Is that okay because they cost a third of U.S. cars, or no?
So here, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
So I think about trying to think of this in a security model, right? So you would think that security people would be happier with more security. That's not true, right? Because you can have as much security as you want. We can lock your front door. We can lock every door in your house. We can make the keys to the locks in your doors in your house so hard to get to that you stop using rooms, right? And this tariffs, and as we all know, we're in this information space where it's hard to, you either have to love tariffs or hate them. You have to love firewalls or hate firewalls. You have to have no doors whatsoever, or all the doors need to be cemented shut. And to your point, Mike, yeah, sometimes tariffs, economic vehicles, need to be used or levers need to be used in negotiations, and that's how you deal with that sort of thing. You slam a tariff on it. But when you start just saying we're going to have firewalls at every internet connection and every light bulb, and you're going to get access by the system administrator who you can get between the hours of 9 to 5 on Wednesdays, you don't have a network anymore or an economy.
That's true. And it's every other Wednesday, not just Wednesdays. But again, I just, if we're going to go free, so with the Chinese cars in particular, Thomas Friedman, in his series of Flat Earth books, said everyone wants to live like an American. They don't necessarily want to live in America. They don't necessarily agree with everything the U.S. is about. But one thing they all want to do is live that American lifestyle. Consume, live a good life. It happened to Japan, right? And it's happened in China. When we talk about Chinese cars, for instance, flooding the U.S. market, the thought is, it's not that they outcompete us and make a better car. The thought is that those cars are subsidized by the Chinese government so that the costs are artificially low and not true when you take out the government subsidies. Or even worse, they're made with slave labor from the Muslim territories in China where, and it's forced labor, right? Part of that free market thing is, hey, if it's truly a free market, if it's truly a worldwide free market, all things equal, and you out innovate us, produce us, are smarter than us, more power to you. But if you're using government subsidies, free or forced slave labor, child labor, in other words, you're not playing by the same rules, then there's nothing the matter with putting up barriers to that. So if the Chinese can build a better car than we can in Ohio or Detroit or anywhere else in this country, more power to them. I don't think that's the case with Chinese cars, though. I think they are heavily subsidized. I think the R&D work comes out of Chinese research labs. I think, the labor is, for instance, we'll forget cars for a second. Let's look at Foxconn and the iPhones, right? They used to make it very cheap, but when they had to start kind of playing by the same rules, all of a sudden it wasn't so cheap to make them there no more. So that's where I am on the free market.
Some would say the R&D for those Chinese cars came from Detroit and Germany.
That's a whole right, and it was stolen. That could very well be too. And if you prove that that's the case, that's yet another reason to put up barriers.
Yeah. But here's where it kind of gets very complicated in my mind, because so if you go to Africa or even South America, you start to see more and more of these Chinese cars. So they're not just leveraging up to own their own market, they're leveraging up to own other markets around the world that we can slap tariffs on. But then that gives them
those markets. We only care about our market.
Well, we have to care about them.
Short-sighted, but you just put the nail on the head, Mike. Is we live in a global economy. We're all interconnected, and we have got to figure out a way to outcompete our competitors. putting up walls and trying to just isolate ourselves in here is not the answer to outcompeting our competitors. That's why foreign into some of those countries. So they say the US are good people. Right?
All right, we're gonna give you a discount on AI if you buy 10 Fords.
Or maybe we'll help your people feed themselves. Oh no, we can't do that anymore. We shut that down. All right, we're going to end it on this cheerful note.
I just had one question. What are tariffs?
Yeah, it's a good question.
They're taxes that you pay that someone cons you into thinking somebody else is paying.
Oh, there's a lot of that.
Hey, all right.
I'm tariffed out, please.
Are we going to be back? Are we going to be back tomorrow with more, Mike? I can't wait to see what else you come up with for us.
I think I tried to put all the political stuff in one episode because I don't know.
Hey, enjoy your Wednesday. We've got a lot of great Techstrong TV following this. Probably a little less of this politically themed, charged stuff. We've got some good tech, which is why you come here. We'll be back tomorrow with more. But until then, on behalf of Chris and Amanda, John, Mitchell, and Mike, I'm Alan Schimmel, and we're out of here.